Caribou could hardly contain his excitement. At last, he had crossed paths with members of Blackbeard's crew. To him, this was fate, an opportunity he had dreamed about his entire life. He gushed that he had information Teach would love to hear, something that could win them favor with the captain himself. But Van Augur, ever cold and calculating, raised his rifle and aimed it directly at the slimy pirate. Caribou panicked, insisting he wasn't their enemy, pleading that this meeting wasn't coincidence, but destiny. Augur, unimpressed, pressed him for answers. What was someone like him doing on a government-controlled island? Caribou explained that assassins had been hunting him endlessly, but swore he wasn't one of them. He warned that if they killed him now, Blackbeard would be furious, a claim that only seemed to make Augur more eager to pull the trigger. Desperate, Caribou shouted that he had information no one else did. Katarina Devon scoffed, calling it a bluff from a coward clinging to life. Yet Caribou insisted that what he knew could shape the entire world. The information he revealed was about the ancient weapons, the legendary powers named after gods of old. He spoke of Poseidon, the ability residing within Princess Shihiroshi, and of Pluton, said to be hidden somewhere in Wano. He declared that aside from him, only the Straw Hats knew of these secrets. Augur pressed him further, but Caribou refused to reveal more unless they brought him to Teach directly. Meanwhile, chaos raged just off the coast. The Navy was locked in a hopeless struggle against the Pacifista. Warships were being obliterated one after another, their cannon fire useless against the Pacifista's bubble shields. Lasers rained down, sinking vessels in bursts of fire and smoke. Vice Admiral Doberman barked orders for the fleet to retreat. It was clear they had no chance of winning in a head-on clash. Other Vice Admirals fumed that Egghead was nothing but a disaster, some even calling for the Buster Call to be cancelled now that the Giants have arrived on the island. But Vice Admiral Guillotine held firm. Vegapunk, she argued, had handed authority of the Pacifista to a pirate, an unforgivable betrayal. If they wanted to regain control, they would have to capture Jewelry Bonnie. Vice Admiral Tosa surged forward, his eyes locked on his target. On the ground, Frankie and the others spotted him closing in. They pushed their Dom shoes to full power, darting through the forest at breakneck speed. Frankie, still unsteady with the shoes, nearly planted face first into the dirt before swerving through the trees like a drunken insect. Tosa, however, showed no hesitation. He tore through the forest like a beast, his massive claws sharp enough to rival Shigan, ripping apart everything in his path. He roared that if he could tear through trees, he could certainly rip Bonnie to pieces. Just as he lunged for the girl, a massive axe came crashing down on him. The ground trembled and everyone froze. Standing before them, grinning ear to ear, were Dory and Brokey of Elbaf, the legendary giant warriors. Unable to believe their eyes, what were giants doing here? The warriors laughed heartily, their towering frames casting shadows over the battlefield. Frankie nervously asked what they had against his captain, but Brokey reassured him that they bore no hostility. On the contrary, they owed nothing but gratitude to the Straw Hats. They were warriors of Elbaf, and if Luffy was their ally, then they would protect his friends as well. More giants soon appeared, declaring that they too stood on the side of the Straw Hats. Frankie nearly collapsed with relief, admitting he had been seconds away from soiling himself. The giants erupted in booming laughter, brushing off his fear as they prepared to fight. Bonnie seized the moment to plead with them. Luffy, Sanji, and Vegapunk were still trapped in the island's center. Could they help? Without hesitation, the giants agreed, promising their strength to the cause. As the Straw Hats' allies boarded the giants' ship, Frankie glanced at the towering warriors in awe, realizing these were the very same legends Usopp had spoken about countless times. Out at sea, the Navy's vice admirals raged over the loss of contact with Tosa. Some suspected he had been defeated, others guessed he had run into a giant. But in the end, both conclusions meant the same thing. Egghead had become a battlefield far beyond their control. Far from the heart of the battle, reinforcements were still arriving. Vice Admiral Doberman and the others pressed their assault, while Vice Admiral Doll soared in with her pet cat clinging tightly to her shoulder. She hitched a ride alongside Vice Admiral Tsuru, the veteran strategist of the Marines. Despite her frailty, Tsuru remained a commanding presence, though her voice rasped with age, worn by decades and a lifetime of chain smoking. Even Doll, with her usual composure, admitted her respect. As they approached the island, Tsuru asked if Doll had ever faced giants before. Doll nodded, recalling that 2 decades ago she had once served under a giant commander. Vice Admiral Bluegrass added that this giant was none other than Jaguar D. Saul, a man of incredible strength and courage in his time. Back on land, Brogy and Dory, the legendary giants of Elbaf, stood tall over the battlefield. One of the younger giants asked Frankie where the rest of the Straw Hats were hiding. Frankie explained that they were in the lab above the clouds, which made the giant immediately assume they had taken refuge in Skypiea. Meanwhile, chaos erupted in the core of Egghead. Saint Saturn, battered and bloodied from his earlier humiliation, began convulsing violently, his body twisted into an even more grotesque demonic form, an abomination radiating death. With every step the spider-like elder took, the ground beneath him rotted away. Luffy rushed to check on Vegapunk, only to find the scientist barely clinging to life. His heart was weak, his body broken. Vegapunk admitted that if he moved now, it would surely kill him. Still, he had unfinished business. He wanted to pass on the truth of Bonnie's inherited authority to ensure she knew what role she must one day fulfill. He begged them to protect her, warning that her life was in constant danger. Sanji glared at Saturn, remarking how with every passing moment, the Elder looked less and less human. The air itself seemed to decay under his touch. With a roar, Saturn lunged at the group. Sanji barely managed to snatch Vegapunk out of harm's way, dodging the crushing strike at the last second. But his hands were full, and Vegapunk's bleeding only worsened. Luffy stepped forward, clapping his massive hands together and mocking Saturn with a grin. His taunts only fueled the Elder's fury, and Saturn lashed out in all directions. Luffy laughed, dodging every blow, making the fearsome Gorosei look like a fool. Meanwhile, he ordered Sanji to focus solely on getting Vegapunk to safety. The battle escalated as Admiral Kizaru joined the fray. With a flash of light, his blade pierced straight through Vegapunk's chest, carving a hole that sent the scientist crashing into the ground. Sanji and Luffy screamed in shock, watching the man who had given them everything fall before their eyes. His life force plummeted, and even Sanji's desperate pleas couldn't change the outcome. Rage consumed Luffy. His body expanded, his voice thundered across the island as he bellowed at his enemies. "You miserable jerks aren't going anywhere!" He grabbed Kizaru in one hand, snatched Saturn's twisted head in the other, and began crushing them both with the raw power of a Yonko. This was the wrath of Monkey D. Luffy unleashed in full. Vegapunk, fading fast, looked on with a weak smile. With what strength remained, he muttered words that would echo far beyond the battlefield. There will be nothing left for the weak. His heart gave out, his body slumping as life left him. Sanji screamed in anguish, begging him to hold on, unable to accept that the scientist was gone. Then, without warning, the entire world began to change. Screens across every nation lit up. Denden Mushi transmitted a signal on every frequency. It was Dr. Vegapunk's voice. Calm, steady, and commanding, he introduced himself to the world as a humble scientist, but his next words promised something far greater. He declared that what he was about to reveal would shake the foundations of everything people thought they knew. The message of truth, the hidden history of the world itself, was about to be unveiled. And with that, the episode ended. The preview for the next installment promised even greater chaos. The title should be Vegapunk's Secret Plan, a worldwide broadcast. It teased a message powerful enough to make the Gorosei desperate to silence him, no matter the cost. The truth was now at risk of reaching every corner of the globe. Man, what an insane episode this was. Vegapunk may have fallen, but his last broadcast could shatter the balance of the world itself. If you're hyped to see what happens next, comment One Piece 1142 so YouTube knows you're ready. Check out the next video on your screen, it's absolutely wild. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.